Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding Motion. And today I'm going to talk to you about lightweight and heavyweight and why sometimes lightweight might be more effective. And there are a few circumstances where it might be a better way to grow muscle. Now, again, the mistake that a lot of people make is that when you say something like lightweights can be good, then they say, oh, lightweights are always good in every single circumstance. And I would adamantly disagree with that. So what I'm trying to say is that heavyweight is great. Putting on strength is great. Being able to use heavier loads of weight is also great, right? But the mistake a lot of people make is that they say, I'm going to lift just heavier weights, but they're not thinking about hitting all the different muscle fibers or also hitting certain muscles that are not necessarily getting hit with the technique you're using for the heavy weight. So we all know that when you're using heavier loads, you will have to adjust your technique for the safety of the joints and also for the perfection of the groove to make sure when you are lifting such a weight that you are basically putting yourself in a biomechanical advantage instead of disadvantage. And that is good advice. That's a good thing to do when you're lifting heavier loads. But what I see people doing with isolation exercises is that they apply the same principles as they do to their compound lifts, and they progressively just use heavier and heavier loads, which again, can be good for some workouts. It can hit certain muscle fibers, it can hit certain areas. You know, you might be overloading certain areas in a very effective way. But that doesn't mean that using a different technique that you can only use with lighter weights offers no opportunity. So when you're using lighter weights and getting more creative with the movements, maybe they're fuller or there's more of a squeeze at the top and so forth, you know, these movements that look pretty, right? And a lot of times, you know, people bust pro bodybuilders' chops because they're doing all these fancy movements. And of course, these guys aren't natural like us, so they grow from anything. But what I would urge you to do is not throw the baby out with the bathwater like I used to. You know, I'm like, oh, that's just for those drug bodybuilders. I have to lift heavy weight all the time. And that's what I used to think. But the truth is that there is no doubt that when you're lifting weights, like say I'm doing an arm curl and I'm lifting super light, but I'm kind of squeezing at the top in a different way, I am including certain ranges of motion that might not be effective with heavy weight because I have to overpower other weak links. So in some circumstances, using lightweight will allow me to squeeze the muscles more at the top or get creative with the angles in a way that I never could with heavy weight. If I used heavy weight and I tried to put my arm in the same position, what would happen is the shoulders would become glaring weak links in the process, and I wouldn't even be able to hit those, you know, hard to get sort of areas, so those hard to get muscles. And the other thing is that sometimes by using these lighter poundages and experimenting, you will notice that there are some different angles that you can hit that will allow you to greater isolate a certain muscle group. So some of the things that some pro bodybuilders say is, you know, are correct, right? In certain circumstances. So I would say this type of movement, this hyper isolation, and you know, you're trying to get creative and not move necessarily efficiently, but efficiently to hit that certain muscle group you're trying to hit. These type of exercises would be good to hit the slow twitch fibers or to isolate those hard to get areas that you can't get with your heavier movements. So by all means, this doesn't mean to give up heavy training. But what I'm saying is when you include some of these hyper isolation type of movements or these technique adjustments that you're only capable of making with lighter poundages, you might get some unbelievable results in areas that just were never able to get isolated with the heavier weights. So that's really what I'm saying. So with arm curls, like say I'm doing arm curls with heavy weight, I definitely just bend the elbows and keep the elbows back, right? If I start doing this, my shoulders start getting hit so much that it's no longer even a bicep exercise for me. But when I'm using lighter poundages, say with curling with the bar, I can curl all the way up here and all the way down, and my shoulder does not become as much of a factor. You know, my biceps feel like there's a certain area of the biceps that are getting stimulated that weren't getting stimulated with the heavier poundages by keeping my arms back. So it's not always about right and wrong. It's more about using all these different tools to hit different parts of the muscle or different muscle fibers And sometimes these lightweights allow those great adjustments in technique to hyper isolate. I don't think they're great just on their own, and that's where a mistake is made. I think some people, they just do light all the time and that's all they do. I think that would be a mistake. But if you were integrating these types of hyper isolation, super light, creative type of movements in your workouts, I think there can be some place for them. And always pay attention to make sure that you're not doing something too creatively and irritating your joints in the process, because some people think when they use lightweight, it's impossible to get injured. That's not true. It is definitely possible to get injured with lightweight. So always pay attention to the body and how it feels when you're moving in these new ways. So yeah, I just thought that this is something for you to consider in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't got my book yet, make sure you get it. And if you need a weight training program, I've got programs on my website, naturalglandbodybuilding.com. And thanks a lot for watching, guys. And thanks a lot to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. Mojo. Oh yeah.